So the women's tag team match or multi-woman match should be like a stipulation match, and also should get a crap ton of time at Mania, especially with not only the main event star power that kind of exists in the division, but the amount of time that they've been getting on TV, despite I think the lack of plot progression that the women have been given. They've made so much of essentially like putting on really good matches. You know, the small mic time that they get compared to the dudes, especially I think in the last couple of weeks with the main event scene. Like, it's kind of insane how they've booked this tag division, despite it being essentially the most stacked tag division. You have the Kabuki Warriors, you have the new team of Nia Jax, Last Legend, you have Charlexa, right, both like Hall of Famers. I mean, everyone I just mentioned, every single member, right, of all three of those teams are all Hall of Famers. Like Kairi Sane, Asuka, gonna be Hall of Famers. Nia Jax, Lash Legend, gonna be Hall of Famers. You know, Alexa and Charlotte, gonna be Hall of Famers. It kind of points to an obvious real problem they have with booking women in WWE, which I think happens in AEW as well, is that they genuinely just don't give them the same time and breadth as the men, like just genuinely. For example, Jade and Rhea could be one of the night's main events, or even Stephanie and Liv could, especially with how they've been building it too. Like, I'm surprised it like they haven't tried to take a hit and have one of the main event, because like you can build it on both of those, because Stephanie is super over and Liv is like the ultimate heel, you know what I mean? But like, even with like Jade and Rhea too, like these are two like monster like superstars that like this should be a dream match that we've been waiting for a minute, that they could have easily played off like a, you know, like a once in a lifetime, you know what I mean? But like they just kind of threw them together, especially when, you know, Rhea and Io were kind of part of that whole tag team kind of skerfuffle, whatever, right? My whole problem really with it all is like how hodgepodge they are with the women, right? Like even with, like, we talk about maybe what was one of the stronger parts this year in terms of the women's division with the IC title, you know, and making a star out of Maxine Dupree, and bringing back Natalia as Natty, as that super awesome character that we were seeing in like Bloodsport and GCW. Within that same breath, like the start booking for everybody we've been seeing, you know what I mean? Like with AJ not being there a bunch of times with that IC title, Becky really did have to carry a lot of what was going on with that, I feel like, with a lot of her heel promos and stuff. But like, they just didn't it doesn't feel like they put the same effort and you know, time into creating a continuity and world for the women's division. I think, especially compared to 41 and 40, in terms of the stories that they had building up to Mania, they've really slacked this year, despite having such, you know, most of these women, you know, I know a few are injured, but having so many women that are ready, willing, and able to have like top goddamn fucking matches. It gets kind of crazy to a point where you're like, wow, so like we're getting a 6-man tag match between Speed and Speed and the Vision and the Usos and LA Knight, but like, where, like, have we really gotten any confirmation on the US women's title and like what Julia's going to be doing completely with that? Why wasn't there really as much fanfare for people getting that IC title until literally the last couple of weeks when there was a championship scramble? Like, it just does feel like they treat the majority of, or all of, the women as a mid-card act, and it's like, especially when they're like, when someone like Rhea is getting the same reactions as like, you know, Reigns or whatever, like it does kind of feel and start to get disingenuous. You know, it's great that, you know, Penta in the IC title match is getting an IC like ladder match, but the fact that the women aren't getting that crazy like spot fest match, to me, despite being the obvious like choice with being a multi-women match, to me is so like what I'm trying to figure out why we didn't think of doing that. I just think in general, they're despite the pure talent, charisma, and how packed the division is, the tag division, the top of the divisions and stuff like that, I feel like they're still not being given the actual spotlight to really be doing, to be putting that on. We go back to Evolution, we look at that whole card, and it was just all bangers, you know what I mean? And they were able to have really, really good fucking matches too, with proper time. And like, I don't know, man, especially when like you're watching NXT, and like even still now with current NXT, like they just book the women so much better, because they're just like, if it's the generates the most heat, it's gonna go on last. If it doesn't matter man or woman, you know what I mean? Like that's what we should be doing for the health of the sport. You know what I mean? It makes more sense. That's why we have so much fanfare coming out of NXT for these women, because they're being booked way better, and are being given and being booked with more context and character on NXT than they are given on the main roster. So it's disappointing to see when they come on the main roster, and then the depth and context and the time that they were given on NXT, goes out in the back end. You know what I mean? And it's like, that to me is extremely frustrating. And I feel like this culmination of, like, especially with this IC title match, like AJ and Becky is money. I get it, super money. But there are so many women that I think definitely deserve an opportunity and some time, flirting with that IC title. Like, I thought that was the purpose of that thing, especially with the tag titles. Like, I love that Nia Jax and Lash are getting this time to like really dominate on everybody. But I think if that's the essence of everything, like, then we need to be a bit more focused in our and all of our promos and everything, because just having all the women come out, all of them attack each other, and then vie for this title week after week after week is redundant, when we can be like exploring each of their dynamics the same way that they would maybe one week choose to explore the dynamics of Charlotte and Alexa, explore the dynamics of Bayley and Lyra. But like, because of that stop-start booking they would do with each of those, it never felt like we got some sort of climax or any emotional, really anything from these teams, despite them being just put together for the sake of they're both popular, two popular super strong singles women. Let's put them together for the sake of, like, I don't know, like making or boistering our division. It doesn't feel like there's really any other reason that everyone is all together, you know what I mean? And that's my problem, where it's like, in these, even in the half-assed men's feuds, there's like a lot of thorough lines that make a lot of sense. Like I said, I'll give them, with AJ and Becky, I think they've done with the limited appearances that AJ has done, and what they've done with the IC title when making Maxine and Natty more relevant. I think that has been really good. But to then, not have a multi-person match, to then just go back to the match that we've already seen twice in AJ and Becky, I think isn't really the go there anyway. And I do think, yes, they have context and a lot of heat with each other, but a lot of that is based on the context of helping a lot of the other women that were involved anyway too. Especially if it's going to be a blow-off match, like, where are the stipulations? You know what I mean? But regardless, I do feel like it's because there's a lack of forethought and foresight for a lot of what's going on in the women's division, and it's stupid. To me, it doesn't feel like there's really any justification for it, so it does feel kind of like archaic. I don't understand what we're doing that, we have such stacked roster and stuff like that, but there's such a lack of forethought for booking the women's division. We'll kind of see what happens essentially with, I guess, a lot of the fallout of Mania. Maybe we'll get more focused kind of storytelling between like Bayley, Lyra, or Alexa, and everybody kind of going into the Backlash season, so that we have more kind of continuity and stuff to draw from maybe this year, so that they're more well equipped. And I think there's probably a lot of lessons that they've even learned in terms of how they've handled this year with the women, in terms of like what they can do and how many feuds they can have. Because like, I don't understand why it feels like we put the woman on the back burner, especially when like there's such a prevalent just when you have such a stacked roster. It's just insane to me, especially with how marketable some of these ladies are, and how that could be such a powerful force. I mean, Rhea Ripley alone, for example, right, I think has commandeered probably a lot of notable traffic to WWE for her look, her style, etc. And a lot of these, like with Naomi's like heel turn, you know what I mean? Like that was such a star-making moment that people were clamoring to see this chick like cut her next promo. You know what I mean? Like a lot of these, I think, hotbed moments, especially because I think it's still like, it's crazy. In still in 2026, like we're like, hey, like, you know, the women main eventing is a special thing because they just there's such a lack of I feel like thought for them in like terms of their booking and making them relevant. So they kind of have to all do that on their own almost in a way. I hope that, you know, moving forward this year we get a lot more focused stories, you know, similar to like how we kind of saw with the past with the IC title and a lot of those women that were involved with that. I want to see that more for like the US title as well. Like someone like Julia should have had a prolific reign, you know, proving herself as one of the top Joshis and maybe even rubbing with a lot of the people that she's known through the indies and in the WWE and you know, in that. And we could have, there's just so many things we could have done, for example, that I feel like would have made more sense than having people sit in the back or you know, not giving enough real time to these women to really properly tell their stories and you know, and properly generate heat and interest for what they're doing. At this point, I don't know if it's, like I said, I don't know why or the reason and how for it, but I do think there needs to be a change and some sort of extreme, like, because I've noticed this on both kind of brands, AEW and WWE, whereas AEW is not as discriminatory in terms of, you know, what they let the women do essentially, but I still think they kind of undersell the women and don't give them the time and main event spots that they do kind of rightfully garner heat wise in service of always having your men's world title match as the main event, etc., etc. I think that might be another video to focus on AEW's kind of double standards too as well. But yeah, like it's just so disappointing, especially when, like, I think going into a lot of this WrestleMania season with so many of these teams and what was going to happen, I was so intrigued to what was going to happen, what breakups, what things were going to happen. But like the fact that we're still basically having all these teams rounded up and now just fighting for the title kind of at Mania does kind of scream to me that there wasn't much thinking or forethought into the intricacies of everybody. But they do this for Jay, the Usos and the Bloodline. They do this for you know, Drew and his context with Cody and his context with the, you know what I mean? It's like, it does feel, like I said, disingenuous when we're not really giving that same breadth and focus on all the women in division and maybe like the select few. It's my two kind of sense on that. I am excited to see that match. I think they can go real hard if they give them, you know, decent time and they get cool, crazy spots. But the fact to me that it's not a gimmick match kind of, to me, feels like they didn't want to give them a lot of time to necessarily go like super hard. But we'll see. I can be proven completely wrong, and I would fucking love to at this point in time, especially for what we're kind of getting as a wrestling show this upcoming you know, 2 weeks and week and a half, you know. So we'll see. It's still Mania season, you know what I mean? It can't be all too bad, you know. I'm super excited for all these people to get opportunities to be on the Mania card. That's what matters at the most at the end of the day, right? Let me know what you guys kind of think about the whole women's division and the tag division and how they're kind of booking it and what you'd like to see kind of moving forward, you know, next Mania season, you know. And if there needs to be more done to put, you know, to really build these women so that something like a Rhea and Jade should be main eventing in night 1 or night 2, like it should be. Like there's, to me, it's a failure on WWE's part that they don't build these characters and moments properly so that, you know, it can really serve the biggest effect possible. That's just kind of my 2 cents in that situation. Let me know what you guys kind of think, and I'll see you guys in the next video.